Coming up, oversexed, overpaid and over here. Britain is invaded by swaggering American soldiers. Can one young English woman find lasting love in wartime? In the Second World War, victory against the Nazis depended on an event that happened far away on the other side of the world, on the peaceful Pacific islands of Hawaii. In December 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and forced the United States into the war. The cavalry had arrived, and very quickly our little island was swarming with Americans. 1.5 million of them were either stationed here or stopped off here on their way to Germany. This development had a decisive impact on the course of the war and meant a heck of a lot to the Brits who worked with them, fought with them, or, as was often the case, fell in love with the American GIs. Joy Beaver would be one of them. But back in 1941, before the GIs arrived, she was just 16, and a love affair was the last thing on her mind. Joy soon became her family's only wage earner and had to support her mother and 2 younger brothers. She'd catch the train before 7:30 each day when it was cheaper. But instead of leaves or snow on the line, there was the threat of blown-up bridges or unexploded shells. She had a boring job at the Inland Revenue in the city, typing letters to people who hadn't paid their tax. Joy lived for her daily break.
Best time of day was the lunch hour, and I could walk in the gardens of the Tower of London.
At the end of each day, she'd catch the train home before night fell and the bombing started once again. Supper could be an omelette made from powdered egg, or if there was nothing else available, there was the sinister threat of whale meat. In the evenings, they'd listen to jazz or popular songs on the record player, or tune into Winston Churchill for a bit of courage.
We will mete out to the Germans more than the measure they have meted out to us.
At weekends, Joy and her friends glammed up and hit the dance hall, the Embassy Ballroom in Bexley, newly reopened after the worst of the Blitz.
It's really a nice place. It was a big dance hall and had a nice band. And
it was also a popular haunt for American GIs.
of course, that drew a lot of girls that wanted to come there and dance with the soldiers.
But these American boys were supposed to be on their best behaviour. Just look at this. This is the little book they all had to read, Instructions for American Servicemen in Britain 1942, issued by the US War Department. The purpose of this guide is to start getting you acquainted with the British, their country and their ways. It goes on to give lots of handy advice. The British are often more reserved in conduct than we. So, if Britons sit in trains or buses without striking up conversation with you, it doesn't mean they're being haughty and unfriendly. Probably they're paying more attention to you than you think, but they don't speak to you because they don't want to appear intrusive or rude. And there's another one here. I really like this. Keep out of arguments. You can rub a Britisher the wrong way by telling him, "We came over and won the last one." I don't think they'd like that. And most importantly, don't be a show-off. The British Tommy is apt to be specially touchy about the difference between his wages and yours. Keep this in mind. Actually, the British Tommy was most likely to be worried about the thought of a GI running off with his wife or the girl next door. And to be quite honest, he was probably right to be. As one British comedian famously put it, the Yanks were oversexed, overpaid, and over here. But the GI that Joy met in September 1944 wasn't like that at all. How did you first meet Carl?
He was brought to the embassy ballroom by the other guys in the unit. They said, you should come and meet this girl.
His name was Carl Beebe.
He was not so laughing and joking and all that kind of thing like the others were. You know, he didn't tell me that the streets of New York were paved with gold.
Carl was stationed here at the stately home Hall Place, 2 miles from Joy's house. He worked for US Army intelligence, intercepting encoded messages from Nazi high command. Soon, Carl asked Joy out, and they hit it off. They'd go for walks in the park near where she lived.
He was always bringing me flowers or something. For Easter, he picked a whole bunch of daffodils.
There's a place where flowers grow.
After 3 months of courting, Carl proposed. But arranging a wedding in wartime required, let's say, special skills. How did you get a dress this nice in the middle of the war?
You'd have to ask my brother. How he got it through some friends of his or people he knows, I don't know.
So you're saying it was off the black market, really, aren't you?
I believe that it was the black market, yes.
Did you get married in a church?
Yes, I did. A very much damaged church. The roof was out and the rain and the snow was coming through. They'd had little pots on the floor to catch the water, and you could hear the water dinging into the pots.
The Second World War had brought Joy and Carl together, and they eventually made the journey to America together with their young son. The war created huge rifts between countries, which took decades to heal. So it's nice to hear some stories of romance coming out of all that chaos. For Joy, at least, and for others like her, the war did have a silver lining.
This way for you.
The Second World War was the People's War, and for many Britons, its triumphant end remains one of our country's finest hours.